Yes, I did win nostalgic today, because today is a marathon full of cartoons that I remembered, at least watching, in the era of 2002 up till, per se, 2010. Because if you grew up in the era of, like, the early Cartoon Network, or at least the era of 99 to 2006, I guess, of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, then you probably realize for a fact that that was the era of when Nickelodeon actually used to be good, or at least I would say 90s Nick was good, and Cartoon Network, at least during its time, was actually pretty much the most interesting era. And one of the cartoons that we have today, at least from the 2000s, is, of course, Billy and Mandy Save Christmas. I haven't seen this one in a long time. I don't know how long, but I think it was when the thing first came out. So, it was pretty long ago when I saw this. And I'm glad that I actually did manage to actually see this thing again, because Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy is one of the most hilarious shows when it first came on the air. And it's a shame that the only way you can either see it now is either, like, through the means of online cartoon sources, or, like, the other means being, like, what is it? Or through Boomerang, which is essentially Cartoon Network's, like, retro cartoon channel, but honestly, they're just playing, like, some of the newer cartoons on there, like freaking Uncle Grandpa or some show like that. Which, I'm not gonna review Uncle Grandpa, because I swear that show is, like, made for people who are stoned off their asses. And I mean that figuratively, not literally. Billy and Mandy Save Christmas, and during this time it's Christmas Eve, and Billy and Mandy wind up, visiting the North Pole after an incident with one of the main characters with Scar from Evil Con Care. It's been a while since I remember the show, but it was a spinoff from Billy and Mandy, or whatever. But essentially, in it, they decide to go to the North Pole after an incident with the Mall Santa, where Scar was posing as him, and he tries to almost nearly kill Billy. As they decide to, as of course Grim, Billy, and Mandy decide to go up to the North Pole to visit Santa Claus. But unfortunately, they have, unfortunately, something's gone wrong with the North Pole, as of course Mrs. Claus explains that Santa has been bitten and changed into a vampire. And you know what he's voiced by? Santa is voiced by Gilbert Gottfried. If I knew Aficionados Chris is watching this, he'd probably be happy. Because I think I know for a fact that he does a Gilbert Gottfried impression. At least if I watch his videos correctly. But I also have a friend here in Washington who does a Gilbert Gottfried impression. But in another sense, they gotta find the head vampire who's responsible for all this. So they go on this insane quest while Billy's left in charge to protect Mrs. Claus. And of course, Mrs. Claus puts him in charge and protects him to protect Mrs. Claus from being attacked by a vampire or whatever, and keep her company. Through all means, they wind up, of course, going to the head vampire, played by Malcolm McDowell, who's apparently brushing his teeth while referencing his role from Clockwork Orange, where he's singing in the rain, as, of course, he's sort of a clean freak, as, of course, he winds up tagging along and tells them that he's not the one responsible for or at least he's not the head vampire that they said to be. That there's a head vampire responsible for biting Santa Claus. As, of course, Malcolm McDowell's character winds up tagging along. So, Billy winds up becoming an elf, cleaning up this place and whatnot. And, of course, when they find out that Mrs. Claus is the head vampire, suddenly chaos breaks loose. It's an insane special, but I haven't had this much fun with Billy and Mandy in a long time. But the reason for it? I never watch Boomerang because it's hard to literally see when anything's good on the channel, because they play a lot of junk on the channel and they don't play a lot of the old cartoons on there. Because when I grew up, they played a lot of like Mike Lowe and Og and like the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons on there. And even some of the old like cartoons on there. There was even one era in 2014 when they actually did play Ed, Edd and Eddy. And Eddy on the channel for a little while, but then it suddenly vanished. So Boomerang is a big question mark on when you can actually watch some of the old Cartoon Network shows. So, B, the other means is that the only way to actually watch, like, the episodes is through means of finding the episodes online, through means of, I hate to say this, torrenting it, or be lucky enough to find somebody who's at least uploaded the episode to it, because this is a pretty funny Christmas special that Billy and Mandy has, and this is the only one there is. I mean, this is before a regular show, like 5 years before it, and this is like probably something that I really had fun with in a long time. And besides that, Malcolm McDowell is in it, and the first thing he appears in is that he's referencing his line from Clockwork Orange, where he's, of course, singing in the Rain, from the actual film Singing in the Rain. And that's pretty funny itself. And of course, to make things very interesting, the end credit song is Rat with Round and Round. Kick ass! Ended with a rock song instead of a traditional Christmas song. That's how you do it for a Christmas special. So, you get the chance to look for Billy and Mandy, at least the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Try watching Billy and Mandy Save Christmas around this holiday season. It's well worth it. So I think next up on our list, if I have the chance to do it, I think I'll go for either Rocko's Modern Christmas or Holly Jolly Jimmy. Maybe it's a SpongeBob Christmas, or what's another one I could think off the top of my head that's even worth the watch around this time? Maybe Impossible, or... Oh wait! Codename Kiss Next Door! Of course! Codename Kiss Next Door, and even Powerpuff Girls. Because they've had some really, like, fantastically amazing Christmas episodes, you know? There's, like, 'Twas the Fight Before Christmas, and... what is it? Crap, I forgot. Operation Naughty. Remember that one. So, this is probably going to be a big nostalgic episode for today. So, give it here. And move it along. Next, we travel back to the 90s when Nickelodeon was actually kind of decent, and when Cartoon Network was actually getting their feet off the ground, with Rocko's Modern Christmas, the only Christmas special for Rocko's Modern Life. So, growing up, at least in the 2000s, Nicktoons was starting to become a channel when I was watching, it during 2002 to 2008 and whatnot, when they were playing all the old Rugrats and Rocko's Modern Life, Kablam, and Action League Now, stuff you'll see on the Splat on T-Nick. The one thing that at least I'm proud of is that at least in my life, I got to watch a lot of these old cartoons when they first aired on Nicktoons. I never grew up in the 90s. I've made this very clear throughout a lot of my, reviews and 28 Days Marathon and vlogs and whatnot. But I think the one Rocko's Modern Life Christmas episode that I never really did see was, of course, this one. But I think it was because that they never aired it at the right time on Nicktoons. Or I just never really caught it at the right... But that could be the theory. I never really caught it at the right chance at the right time. So, to make up for it, I basically saw it and I basically gave it a chance. Now that the show's basically now available out from Shout Factory, you can basically now see the entirety of Rocko's Modern Life on DVD from them, thanks to Paramount's owners, Viacom. Screw them. Anywho, in Rocko's Modern Christmas, the one thing that Rocko is doing throughout the holidays is that he wants to wish that it snows for Christmas Day. And he's trying to figure out what to do to make, Christmas, to make it snow on Christmas. But nothing seems to be working out. But, of course, he winds up deciding, right on Christmas Eve, to set up a Christmas party for everyone to, party down with. Which, of course, seems to be the logical reason that Rocko is there. But, of course, some neighbors move by, as they seem to be odder than usual. What I mean by that is that they're elves. Then we see that Rocko helps out one of the elves that lives in that said house. And, of course, they wind up forming a bond that they just can't break. In that break, they wind up, of course, sending out invitations to Rocko's party. But unfortunately, Mr. Bighead decides, now that he's found out that the neighbors are elves, to decide to spread some rumors that the elves are going to be poisonous and whatnot to the party. Which, of course, unfortunately doesn't go over very well, especially when the elves get the message that they wind up saying that they're trolls. Again, it's like that game Telephone. You say one message, but the person who winds up getting it at the other end will get the wrong message. But of course, when Rocko sets up the party and prepares for everyone to, what he thinks, come over, it's then later on around midnight that the only person that shows up is the little elf that he helped at the mall, and that he met in the very beginning of the episode. Which, of course, in the long end, he showed love and whatnot. That he winds up, giving love to the clouds and whatnot. That it winds up giving snow to, quite literally, Rocko's house. And that literally everyone shows up the next day to find out what has happened, as of course they all apologize for feeling so bad for missing out on Rocko's party. As of course they join the party, and Mr. Bighead, of course, gets his, injuries for what he did to ruin the party. And of course, they feed their loves to the clouds, and of course, it snows for O-Town. I love this episode and the way that it,
it's a simple little Christmas episode, but it goes a long ways.
But, I mean, what do you expect out of an episode? What do you expect out of a series called Rocko's Modern Life? It's pretty much Rocko gets himself into a simple little situation, and it's just the misadventures that he gets himself into. I don't know why I watched the episode at a young age, but it was fun watching it. And whatever Joe Murray did to create the show, it did give, like, not Joe Poven, Jeff Swampy Marsh and, if I remember this right, crap, I'm forgetting the name of the other creator of Phineas and Ferb now, but Dan Povenmire. Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh, at least some creative realm, that they at least worked on the show for a little while, and then worked on some other shows, that they in the long end created Phineas and Ferb for Disney. And then the new series Milo Murphy's Law, which is airing on Disney XD right now. So, at least it gave them that. But at least we got some pretty memorable 90s Nick shows right here. And I think it's one of the highlights, but it's not as memorable as, say, Looney Tunes on Crack, Ren and Stimpy type of funny, but at least it's in memorable some realm. I still remember Boob Tubed, which is the episode where, you know, Heifer winds up getting his brain sucked into the gigantic TV that the auto buy vending machine winds up giving Rocko. It is funny overall, but I think the next episode we're gonna take a look at, I think we're gonna jump into probably one that kind of is referencing, you know, all those stop-motion Rankin Bass specials. It's kind of a little bit crazy if you understand what I mean. But, of course, we'll find that out in a moment. Surprisingly enough, It's a SpongeBob Christmas is actually one of the more better modern SpongeBob episodes. And this is surprising, seeing how Nick basically just milks SpongeBob SquarePants to no end. Seeing how they basically want to wrap the seasons, how there's not that many talent put into a lot of its episodes, and they put out a lot of not really good shows on Nickelodeon. And besides that, where the line draws with Nickelodeon is essentially probably right around the time that Planet Sheen was put onto the channel, is probably where I say I draw the line with Nickelodeon. I mean, up until, like, Nick actually does get some good shows on there, I'd say that they're not really that well when it comes to shows. But surprisingly enough, It's a SpongeBob Christmas is that decent of a show. At least a decent special. And it's, surprisingly enough, a really good, strong follow-up to, you know, Christmas Who, the first SpongeBob SquarePants Christmas special. In it, SpongeBob is basically given almost a task is almost doing a job by Plankton to give everyone, like, zirconium-laced fruitcake. When that turns all the Bikini Bottom into jerks. And in the long end, SpongeBob has to figure out a way how to, you know, get everyone to, you know, appreciate the holidays again. How to get rid of this zirconium that's inside them. Because, well, Plankton is essentially trying to get himself on the nice list by making everyone eat the zirconium-laced fruitcake so that Plankton could just ease himself on the nice list. So, essentially, this is one of the most insanest of the, specials I've ever seen. But to make things more interesting, this ain't one of the traditionally animated SpongeBob episodes. Far from it. This is entirely made via stop motion. So, you ever seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or Santa Claus is Coming to Town, The Little Drummer Boy by Rankin Bass? This was entirely made by them. Or, not made by them. It feels similar to the Rankin Bass stop-motion specials. And, surprisingly enough, feature films. So, it kind of bears a resemblance to the Rankin Bass specials, surprisingly enough. And in some respects, it is kind of funny to see Rankin Bass style stop motion with that of something that actually was funny back up until 2004 when the SpongeBob SquarePants movie came out. I mean, pretty much is a fun little special. The song that plays in it, Don't Be a Jerk, It's Christmas, is kind of a catchy little tune, and if you ever find yourself listening to it either on the Christmas radio stations or either on Sirius XM Holly, you'll find yourself enjoying it. And as for the special itself, it finds its home on literally the radio. It finds its home on Nick occasionally, which I find surprising that it does that. So, yeah, that happens. I guess from there, I say It's a SpongeBob Christmas is definitely worth the watch and worth the buy if you're interested in it. But I wouldn't, say it's, above Christmas Who, because, again, I grew up with, the SpongeBob SquarePants series when the first 3 seasons were around, and went up until middle school with the SpongeBob SquarePants episodes until I realized, this show is getting dumb. And as soon as I found that out, pretty much I wasn't interested in SpongeBob SquarePants, at least up until I found at least the Mr. Anno reviews, where he basically did his list of the best modern SpongeBob episodes. From then on, at least the newer episodes were a bit decent and at least more funny. But then again, I haven't seen a lot of the new modern episodes because I don't want to give Nicka ratings. And then again, I only watched the old retro Nickelodeon all. So, I guess from there, let's probably jump back into, Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network territory. Depending on what I feel like doing, let's just take a look. So I still decided to stick with Nickelodeon on this, and went back to that of one of the few shows that I actually did watch other than Rugrats and some of the retro Nick shows. That being The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Obviously based on the movie of the exact same name. Now, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius was one of the few shows that I actually did like as a kid on Nick. And it was very funny taking a look at it again. Basically now, there is a lot of references and a lot of techno jargon that, as a young kid, you probably wouldn't understand. But to its extent, it actually does make it a bit funny when you look at it now and try to remember it back then when you probably first saw it. And one of the Christmas episodes that comes from that said show is Holly Jolly Jimmy. In it, Jimmy does not believe in the Christmas season at all and does not believe a thing about Santa Claus. He's so determined that he takes Sheen and Carl up to the North Pole to try to prove that Santa is not real. However, what winds up happening is that they wind up coming across the elves in the North Pole that are working on the toys, as of course his devices wind up accidentally getting overpowered and shock Santa Claus into some sort of submission. Which leads Jimmy and his crew to try to deliver all the presents to all the kids throughout Christmas Eve. Which is not going to be very easy for them, especially with Santa incapacitated and with everything going on, especially with Jimmy's father deciding to ditch Christmas entirely and instead go for a new holiday, Yule, where he basically winds up delivering pies. Yeah, you tell me how that works. So, they wind up in the long end delivering the Christmas presents, but of course their ship doesn't handle the light speed too well. But they wind up getting saved by Santa anyways, who's voiced by Mel Brooks in this. And of course, they wind up, traveling to Retroville. And they, of course, in the end, Jimmy winds up getting his present that he's been waiting 5 years to get. And in the end, he now believes in the Christmas spirit. And that's how it ends. A pretty fun special, certainly one that brought me back to my youth, and something that I most definitely will enjoy the next time I definitely get around to watching Christmas next year. Anywho, we have next on our list probably the only Codename Kids Next Door episode. But for the time being, I'm gonna wait a little while, eat some lunch, and for the most part, I'm going to find some stuff to do while I go and find some other source materials to watch around this time of season, because I have some pretty slim pickings this time of year. But we're almost at the end of this day, so be lucky. So, I kinda fibbed and I forgot there was like one more Christmas special, but I'll get to that when I get to that. So, Operation Naughty from Codename Kids Next Door. I saw it again, and of course, another, special that... It was interesting seeing it again, because... this was one of the ones that I think was picked out of a random cartoon selection, I think? And was created by, I think, Mr. Lawrence or something was the creator of the show. I mean, I forget who creates the show now. Short-term memory loss, I guess. But the show was created via the cartoon, and then people voted for it, and then it just got picked up for a Cartoon Network show. And then it just got popular. It's one of the most popular shows there is. And I basically grew around the time that this show came on, and I loved it. Anytime I went after school, or before school, or during the summer, and Codename Kids Next Door was on, I watched it. It was essentially one of the shows that I kept constantly talking about. Well, other than Ed and Eddie, of course. So, to see a Christmas episode on K&D was actually kind of pretty interesting. And they did it almost in the style of Marvel. Even the narrator even does some sort of Stan Lee impression. saying "True Believers," and even some of the superhero and supervillain names sound like Marvel characters in and of themselves. Oh, and apologies for the noise. In this, we see that obviously the Codename Kids Next Door are breaking into the North Pole and breaking into Santa's sleigh for some reason. But then we find that the KND are actually riding back to their treehouse to, sleep off for the night on Christmas Eve. Why they did this, I wouldn't know. But later do we find out that the people that are posing as the kids next door are actually the delightful children down the lane. The kids next door's nemesis. Well, more or less, numbers 1 through 5. And their personal nemesis. And in it, they see that, obviously, they have to find them and stop them before, of course, they, get themselves caught, or before they turn all greedy on themselves and look like the Grinch. So, it's an interesting little special. I mean, it's not on the levels of Billy and Mandy Save Christmas hilarious. It had its elements here and there that I really liked about Codename Kids Next Door, but not really one I would see again, really. So, Operation Naughty, if you're interested, you might be able to be lucky and might catch it on Boomerang. Don't know, because it's available on such limited providers. But if you are able to find it somewhere, maybe give it a watch. It is an interesting series for an interesting reality. So, of course, next afterwards, I was deciding on maybe ending it here, but then I realized, yeah, how about one more? How about one from one of my favorite shows off Cartoon Network, the one I grew up with in elementary school, the one I laughed my head off so much, and sort of kind of the reason I did music videos to begin with, animated music videos to begin with. Ed, Edd n Eddy, one of the longest running shows on Cartoon Network. And of course I did that. But of course the decision, at least in some respects, has to be between either Jingle Jingle Jangle from 2004 or Fa La 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 Ed from 2000. But obviously the second one, or first one, Fa La 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 Ed, is technically a Christmas in July episode. So, guess we're going to take a look at Jingle Jingle Jangle. So, stay here. And now on to our final special for today of my hopefully nostalgic trip, Ed, Edd n Eddy's Jingle Jingle Jangle. Now, Ed, Edd n Eddy was a show that came out in 1999 on Cartoon Network. So, around that year, I was probably around 2 to 3 years old, I think, around the year that show came on. So, if anything, when I was young and I'd watched Ed, Edd n Eddy on Cartoon Network with my older brother, we both loved the comedy, we loved the slapstick, and of course we loved everything about it. We just loved just about every character there was, and every single scenario that happened in the episodes. We just loved it. And it was one of our few favorite shows we ever watched when we were young. And one of the interesting things was, when I was younger, and this happened when my brother was pretty young, he used to do Ed when he was young. So, that actually brings back memories now. Finding Ed, and Eddie on DVD is practically not easy. The same can be said for the specials. I mean, pretty much only, like, there's, like, volume sets of the episodes, and then there's, like, seasons 1 and 2 out here in the US by Warner Home Video. But pretty much you gotta look pretty hard to find Ed, and Eddie on, like, some sort of source, whether Amazon Video or iTunes. But pretty much, I think for the most part, you can find all the episodes. This is not a guarantee because I don't use iTunes to watch movies or whatever, because I'm not an Apple enthusiast. Besides that, Apple has one too many damn updates for its system. But essentially, a way to watch all the episodes from Ed, and Eddie, at least I think, is through iTunes, through Apple TV shows, whatever they use. Because, oh God, it's I don't know. I'm just getting off topic, just talking about just where you can find it. Anyways, we come across sort of that era when Ed, and Eddie just randomly said, you know, we're almost to our final we're almost to the near end of our final season, and Danny Antonucci, the creator of the show, is getting a bit tired of creating the show, so how about we create some TV specials while we're waiting for whatever he's going to do. And so, with some time and of course some creations, 4 specials were created, 3 of which are created in the holidays, and the last one was actually used for the Cartoon Network Invaded miniseries. So the first one was, surprisingly enough, the Christmas special, Ed, and Eddie's Jingle Jingle Jangle. The second one was Hanky Panky Hullabaloo, which was a Valentine's Day episode, which was a Valentine's Day special. And then Eddie's Boo Ha Ha, which is, of course, the Halloween special. But Jingle Jingle Jangle is what we're going to be talking about right now. So, in this, Eddie has basically looked through his attic to try to find the right Christmas gift. And he scoured everywhere to try seeing if he's got any cool presents or not. But essentially, his parents wound up giving him probably one thing that most kids would definitely hate: clothes. Nobody likes clothes on Christmas. Well, except if you're an adult. But pretty much all you want is, like, video games or, like, movies or whatnot. But anyway, Eddie gets this idea from Double D when he's at Ed's place to basically go around and see if he could cash in on the cul-de-sacs Christmas. Which is not going to be easy, because Eddie's like the major scammer of all these guys. And of course, in the long process of being a bit crazy, Double D and Ed try to show him the true meaning of Christmas, that it ain't all about presents and whatnot. It's pretty much one of my few favorite. Pretty much Ed, and Eddie's Jingle Jingle Jangle is, like, I first remembered watching it when it came on, and I liked it fair enough. And even watching it again in 2014, I still loved it. It was one of my few favorite. I even considered it to be one of my few favorite Christmas episodes of a TV show I used to watch as a kid. But after, like, all of those other, stuff I've seen today, I don't know whether or not I can consider Jingle Jingle Jangle to actually be they are up there with Billy and Mandy Save Christmas and Operation Naughty, or the loads of other, like, Christmas specials that I just watched today. But pretty much, this is one for those that at least like a bit of comedy. Ed and Eddie is like no other Cartoon Network show. It takes itself in a different style. It uses boilerplate animation, which is similar to that or Sticking Around, which, then again, I might need to take a look at that one sometime around this year. And then again, Ed and Eddie was one of the few shows that I actually grew up with when I watched Cartoon Network. Well, other than Rugrats and SpongeBob. But that's for another story that I already discussed. Pretty much, Jingle Jingle Jangle is a fun little story, and without giving away the ending, it is heartwarming, but you'll be like, oh my, I can't believe he just turned on Christmas. He just turned on Christmas, even after learning the true meaning of it. But that's the way Eddie is on the holidays. So, I think we can consider Ed and Eddie to be the one to end this day. And I hope you enjoyed the little trip down, sort of what I would call, memory lane. And it's been a long while since I wanted to actually at least take a look at some of these, like, Christmas episodes. Especially Billy and Mandy Save Christmas. Oh my god, it's been a long time since I've seen that one. But, yeah, I hope to see you guys tomorrow for another, like, Christmas Day marathon or whatever. And now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna listen to the ending song from Billy and Mandy Save Christmas. So, see you tomorrow.